Okay, now that we've chosen a typeface, at least for a starting point, let's call out all our type. So I'm definitely going to make this all body copy. PT Sans has a regular italic, bold, and bold italic. I'm just going to make everything regular. And then I'm going to make a new style sheet for that called text. I'll make all of this text. Okay, so now I have my style sheet set up. Let's go in and grab one piece of copy. Let's start with this one, and we can use this to kind of style. So just grab one of these features, either the dome, theater, science on a sphere, or the pendulum, and use that to kind of space things. So let's start with the size of our body copy. Right now, this is 12 point over 14.4. So 14.4 being the default number. Leading is a visual thing. How much leading to put in copy depends on the width of the line. So right now our width is about 3 inches wide. That makes a difference. How heavy the type is, if it is bold or light, all that makes a difference. But if there is a general rule, it's 120 to 140%. So that means that if this were 10-point type, you could put the leading at 12, which is default, and even go to 14. So if I wanted to go 11 point, I would say 11 times 140, I'd go 15. So if I went 11, I'd go 15. So you get the idea. Now we have a plus sign on our text because we've changed it, so I'm just going to redefine the style. And the next thing that you're going to have to decide with your text is your alignment. So right now, the default is flush left. So you can see on this paragraph panel, we have aligned left, ragged right, centered, aligned right, ragged left, or justified with the last line aligned left. So there's really just two options for this body copy in a brochure like this. Centering it would be a bad idea because it would put a rag on both sides. So we don't want that. We only want a rag on one side or not at all. So we could go aligned left. So let's first look and see if we can justify this. Justifying text looks so clean, and if you can do it, it's awesome, but it's not easy to do, especially with a lot of big words like this brochure has. So let's try this one, justified with last line aligned left. Now this one takes the last line and centers it, which isn't a good look. And this one takes the last line and pushes it over to the right. Also not a good look because our eyes start from the left and we read over. So if you're going to justify, use justify with last line aligned left. Now we'll just look this over. And what you're looking for is this. Do you see these big gaps between these words? That's not going to work. It's not too bad on the rest of it, but we don't want it here. So we could go in and try to space this differently, but if we do that with all our copy, that's going to be a little bit of work. So we're going to actually deal with that within the style sheet. So first of all, I'm going to absorb that change, and then I'm going to open our style sheet and show you some things that we can do for justification. So here's justification, the settings for justifying text. Now this is going word spacing from 80% to 133%, and that's a lot. So I'm actually going to take this 90. What that means is if we allow, and I'm going to take this 120. If we allow a range of 80 to 133%, that means that it can make those large gaps. We don't want those large gaps. Now, letter spacing, we want to give that a little bit. So we want to say you can go -2, or you could go +2. And if we need to, we can keep adjusting this depending on how it works. Now, glyph scaling is tricky because we like to keep our text at 100%. We don't like to make it wider or more narrow. But if you put this at 99 and 101, it will be invisible to the naked eye, and it might help us fit things. So here you can see the auto leading is 120%. Remember, when you put it at 10, it goes to 12. So we can leave it at that, or we could set it at 140. So our text is always 140%. But since we manually put it in there, I'm just going to leave that. And we want a full justify. We'll say OK. It hasn't helped us too much. So let's go back and see if we can adjust our hyphenation setting. So hyphenations. This is where we say how many letters and how many words. So words with at least, and let's see if we can actually preview this as we go along and see how this is helping our break. So words with at least 5 letters, which all of these have 5 letters, and that's fine. After the first 2 letters, I would say 3. That one change brought us down to just 2 hyphens, which looks better. This is saying I only want 3 hyphens in a paragraph, which I would even take it down to 2. Okay, so now we're in pretty good shape, and honestly, it looks like we should be able to justify this text. It's still a little bit gappy right here. In fact, you know what? Let's go back and just adjust this one more time. On the justification, let's say that the letter spacing can go -5 to 5. That helps a little bit. You can look at these text boxes and see that they're all justified that way, and I'm going to set them right on the margin. This, of course, all depends on your layout. I'm just showing you how to style the text, and I'm just going to leave these like this for now. Set this one on the margin. And I still only have 2 there. I only have 1 in that one. This one I have 1, 2. So that looks good. That's beyond acceptable. I'm happy with that. Now this might be a good time to style our subheads. So let's go back to this copy. This is an easy way to style. Now obviously we need some break between these, the name of these, and the body copy. And here's where you can decide if you want to use a secondary type. So I'm going to go and I'm going to make this bold so that it stands out. I'm also going to make it larger. You could even make it caps. Because we're getting into larger type, I'm going to just tighten it up a little bit too. So science on the sphere. The other thing we want is we want some space after, right? We want a gap between that and where the copy starts. So I'm going to go here and just click. Let's just leave it there for now. And you can put in the settings that you want, but it does have to be addressed. So with that in mind, I'm going to call this my subheads. And I'll apply it to all these attraction titles here. That's easy. Up here, I might apply it to this subtitle. And I'm going to apply it to all of this for now. And for this one, I'm not going to justify this. I'm just going to make this flush left. Because these are just the subtitles, they're not the text, so there's no reason to make those go all the way to the width. And with that, I'm going to absorb that change. Now here's where you can make your final decision about your text. Right now we have a sans serif subhead and sans serif body copy. Because these are from the same family, you can mix them like that. So any of the fonts within this typeface can be combined. So we could change these to bold italic, we could change the copy to bold, all this same PT sans. And there's not a ton to choose from. There's only 4 fonts in this: regular, italic, and bold italic. And ideally, what I would recommend is going to Adobe and choosing something that goes with this typeface. So we have a couple of options. One is we see if there are some more fonts in this family. So I'm going to hit in PT Sans. Oh, I see that they do have a PT Sans Pro. Sometimes when they have a Pro, like you can see the one we downloaded has 8. But this one, PT Sans Pro, actually has a full family. So this might be perfect. And with this many fonts in a family, I'd be inclined to stay with just this one because they have condensed, they have heavy, they have everything. So I'm going to activate all of these, and that'll give me a lot more choices, especially when it comes to the cover. Maybe I want to take the word planetarium and make it really large, maybe go up the sides. That's how I had originally designed it. So I could use the PT Sans Pro and go with Pro Black, which is much more bold. And I'm going to make this type box small. Turn it on its side, hold the shift command to power scale this up, and if I wanted to make this really big to go up the side of the brochure, I could do it like that. So that's one option. By getting a typeface that has a lot more fonts in it, then you have a lot more choices, and you could go with just that, using the PT Sans bold for your subheads and using the PT Sans light or regular as your body copy. The other thing you could do is you could pair it with a serif. And what's helpful about Adobe Fonts is they'll actually give you suggestions. So right here it says PT Sans Pro Font Pairings. So they're saying that you could pair it with this wide regular. We don't want that. we want a serif just as an option. So you could go with Arno Pro, which they seem to think is a good match. So let's try that. Arno Pro Regular. And you can see it on the entire brochure because we have these style sheets. So I'm going to make this Arno Pro. And I'm going to, you can see that that's changed my style sheet. So I'm going to actually absorb this. And now you can see what that looks like on all of our body copy. So you could do this combination. You can do a serif for body copy and a sans serif for your subheads. They go well together. Or you can do all of it as the same typeface. So I'm going to change this text back. Another thing you might want to do is break up some of this text. So especially here under the pendulum, this is a lot of copy to read as a chunk. If you wanted to break this up, you could hit return. Now it starts this paragraph on the next line, but you still need to come up with some way to divide space from one paragraph to another. So one thing you can do is you can tab in like that. We don't need a tab that big, so I'm going to hit Shift Command T to get tabs, and I'm going to actually set the tab for right there, a little bit more reasonable. So that's one way to divide up paragraphs. Another way is to do the space after. So I can make it so that this style sheet has space after. So whenever there's a new paragraph, there'll be a little bit of space. So just do that, and then when I go to my style sheets, I just absorb that style. Okay, so wherever you have breaks in paragraphs, which it doesn't look like there's too many here, you could break it up more if you wanted to. So the next thing I want to show you is bullets, because I noticed that this type right here is listed as bullets. Now you don't have to make it bullets. There's a couple other things you could do. So one is you could take this, make this a different style sheet based on that text and call it inset text. And do you see where it's based on text? That means it's going to absorb all the style from that style sheet, and it's just going to make this one change. So here under paragraph, we can take this whole thing and bring it in a little bit. We can also change the leading on that. So maybe for this one, as it's inset, we want to make this a little tighter. This icon will absorb that. So that's one way you could just inset it. The other is we could make this into bullets. So in this case, I'm going to make a new style sheet, and I'm going to call this bullet text. And then I'm going to go to the paragraph, click on this icon. They have one for numbering and one for bullets. And then if you hold the Option or Alt key while you click on that, you'll get a panel that will give you some choices. Right now, this bullet is spaced and sized and everything else just standard. So the first thing I could do is I could apply a character style sheet just to these bullets. So I'm going to say new character style. I'm going to call it bullets. And what I want to do is just make it a little bit bigger. So right now this is 11, so I'll make the bullets 14 point. So when I'm going to put this on preview so you can see. When I apply that bullet, it makes just the bullets a little bigger, not the text. And then the other thing I can do is I can bring that in or out so that the bullets are a little bit better looking. And now, because I have a character style sheet devoted just to those bullet points, I can actually affect change in just those. So I'm going to go to character styles, find my bullet point style. I'm going to open that up by double clicking, and I can do anything I do in here now, make sure it's on preview, is going to affect just the bullets. Do you see how I can make them bigger? I could even change the color. Character color, I could make these a different color. Now that affects the styling of those bullets, but if I wanted to actually change what the bullets are, I would go back to my style sheet for bullet text and come down here to bullets and numbering. So make sure it's on preview so you can see the changes as they take effect. And I'm going to put our list type to bullets, and then the bullet characters that are here are just the minimum, an asterisk or bullet or this kind of weird diamond, but you can actually make a bullet out of anything. So I can add a character by going to something that has dingbats, like Zap Dingbats has a lot of good basics. So let's just say I wanted to use diamonds instead of circles. I could use those, and I could say, okay, which now those look a little big, right? So to size them, that's the character style. So I have to go in here and bring those down. So the styling of it happens here. The fact that there are bullets in the text and how far they are inset and spaced and what the actual bullet characters are is all found within the style sheet. You also have to do styling throughout the brochure depending on your layout. Now this is just chunks of copy I set here. This layout nor this typeface should be what you go with. I'm just showing you how to approach yours, but there's some things you're going to have to do to kind of clean up. So for example, for me, I've got to get back into my guide. I'd probably line Orange Coast College up there. Maybe take exhibits and show times and put it, and try to keep your boxes cleaned up. I notice on some of your files that boxes are kind of everywhere, but it keeps your artboard looking much better if you can kind of keep your boxes, your text boxes under control. If you don't need that much of a text box, then don't put it there. And I'm going to take this exhibits and show times and divide it and put it down here, one line. This is a good example of making a separate box for text. Most of the time I prefer you style it within one text box, but when you want to be able to move things around for your layout, of course you have to put it separately. So I might do something like that. Move this. And maybe over here I want to break these two pieces of text up. So this bullet point copy I'm going to take out of this box and put in its own box, so that maybe I could do something different with these. I might want to move this copy down here. You know, like I said, it just depends on your layout. You guys kind of have that all worked out already, or you should. So I'll move that over and save it to place somewhere else. And I'll make this the size of the panel. Get rid of that last bullet. And maybe this I want to use a much bolder, maybe extra bold, and go much larger, like maybe 27 point. Now when it comes to large text like this, you really have to eyeball the leading. That formula doesn't really work when you get to big text. What you're looking for on big text is crashing ascenders and descenders. So right there is the culprit. So you have to have at least enough text to clear your ascenders, which is above the X height, and descenders, which is below. So they don't. So this is minimum. And I'm -2. So I'm smaller leading than the actual size of the text. So I'll pop it just a tiny bit. And then I don't want to justify this, of course. Imagine a place, and you might want to break this up, and wherever it says where, and we'll have to make it smaller to fit now. And we can go in and hand break some of these things because this is such a large paragraph. Oh, I would love to get technology on one line, but let's see if we can do it. Oh, we did. And that looks good. World class, we probably can't, but that looks like somewhere we want to break. So you could do something like that. You could take that Imagine copy and make it really huge, and then work this, the planetarium features. You could even put that here if you wanted to on the back panel. The back panel always seems to have the most room, and it's kind of like your junk drawer. You can just put whatever fits in there. So you could put it there, or it just depends on your layout. You know, this could even go here on the left side on the panel, whatever you want. Just keep in mind that this is the flap. So if you had all this text on the flap, you wouldn't want it next to text. So I would have to move that out of the way, maybe put an image here. So like I said, it just depends on your layout. And then on the back panel, you can style this differently too. So maybe planetarium has that same subhead. Maybe this copy is less leading. In fact, I think we have one called inset text that's a little tighter leading. No, maybe not. So I would go a little tighter on that. And maybe this is centered, and perhaps you break that. And maybe even put this in its own text box. I'm going to tidy this up, bring the public shows right up here, make a new text box, and put this here. That way I have some freedom about where I put this. So maybe I put this way down here and put the logo above it. Perhaps you have some italics. So you could put under this, we have an italic typeface here. So it could be regular italic. and maybe you bring it in a little bit. So make sure you break up your text with some changes. You want consistency, so the shows, the Science on a Sphere, Dome Theater, and Foucault should all be treated the same because they are equal content. But then you have this list of planetarium features. You have this little bit of imagination text that could be small, large, it could be fit in wherever you need it. I put the public show prices on the back, and I just realized that the public shows are not here, but that's okay. The bottom line is that you can treat those just like this. You can give it the subhead style sheet and the text style sheet, put it in its individual boxes so that you can move it where it needs to go. So that should get you there as far as text. And remember, honor your margins. All of your text should sit on your margins. If you find you're running out of space, just make your margins a little bit smaller, but you have to honor those margins for sure. Now we can move on and talk about images.